The following program is paid for by the friends and partners of Touching Lives.
Problems are not meant to defeat you. They are not meant to depress you. They're not even meant to discourage you. They are meant to develop you. If you will let God do this, listen, God will take problems and there won't be tools that will tear you down. God will make them tools that will build you up.
Teaching people everywhere who Jesus is and why they need Him. This is Touching Lives with James Merritt.
Have you ever been in a situation where you just couldn't decide between murder and patience? I have. I've got 3 boys. I've been where you are. And so I want to give you kind of a transparency moment here. Patience is not my greatest virtue. I've been married 43 years to my beautiful wife, Teresa. And if you were to say to her, what is James's biggest fault? She'd say he just doesn't have a lot of patience. As a matter of fact, there are 2 words in the English language that I guess I hate for someone to say to me more than anything else at all. And here are those 2 words: be patient. I hate it when people say that, be patient. Because there have been times in my life when I've said, God, I not only want patience, I want it right now. And maybe you've been that way. Maybe you say, man, I can relate to that. I read the other day a true story about a father who sat down with his young daughter. And she was old enough, he thought, to understand the value of saving money. And so he was talking about her about money and what money can do, what money can't do, and the value of money. And so he started to try to talk to her about the concept of earning interest. So he said, now, honey, now when your piggy bank is full, it's going to be full pretty soon. He said, we're going to go down to the bank and we're going to give it to them to hold for you. And then they will give you even more money. And that money is called interest. Well, man, her eyes got this big. And she said, really, Daddy? He said, yeah. And they call it what? He said, well, they call it interest. He said, well, Daddy, my piggy bank is full right now, so can we go today? So the dad said, well, let me see. So he picks up the phone, calls the banker, who's a friend of his, and he told him the story about what he's doing with his daughter. And he said, oh, absolutely. He said, bring her on down. So they were on their way down to the bank to open up her first savings account. And so the president of the bank wanted to give her a real special greeting, really give her the red carpet treatment. So the president of the bank waited on her himself. And I mean, he treated that little small, piggy bank full of coins, a very small deposit, like it was $1 million. And then he put her money into the vault, took her back to his desk, gave her a receipt, reached out his hand, shook it, and said, honey, I want to thank you for your business. Well, he stood up for her to leave, but she just kept sitting in the chair. And he looked at the banker looked at the dad with a quizzical expression, like, what's going on? So he turned to the little daughter and he said, honey, is there anything else I can help you with? And she held out both hands. She said, yeah, I want my interest. Now, that's the way we are, right? We want our interest and we want it right now. Well, we are in a series that we've been calling Tasty. And we've been talking about fruit, and more specifically, what the Word of God calls the fruit of the Spirit. Now, the fruit of the Spirit are character qualities that God wants to bear through us. You need to understand, you don't produce fruit, you don't manufacture fruit. God bears this fruit through you. And they're found in Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 through 23. Here they are. The fruit of the Spirit. You ought to learn these. This is a good verse to memorize. It is love, joy, peace, forbearance. That means patience. We'll get to that in a moment. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, let me tell you why I love that list. And by the way, every day in my quiet time with the Lord, I literally go through that list and I say, Lord, today, bear through me the fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, let me tell you why this is such a great verse. Can you imagine what your marriage would be or what your marriage could be if you and your spouse displayed all of those qualities on a constant basis? Let's make this bigger. What would our world look like? What would our world be like if everyone you met, everyone you live next to, everyone you work with would bear the fruit on the tree that we call the fruit of the Spirit? Now, what we've been saying is that fruit has 2 qualities that make it special, okay? Fruit is good to the tongue, that is, it's tasty, and it's good for the body, that is, it's nutritious. So fruit is good to you, and it's good for you. Well, like fruit, God wants our lives to be so tasty to others that they'll be attracted to us in such a way by the way we live and the way we conduct ourselves that we will be both good to them and we will be good for them. Now, if you're like me, you probably find that some of this fruit bears more easily on your branches than others. So here's what I did. I went through this list and I underscored the fruit that needs more fertilizing. Okay, some needs more, some needs less. Let me tell you something. There is not a part of that fruit we looked at today in my life, this may not be you, but for me, that needs more fertilizing and more cultivating than this one, the one about patience. So let me tell you what I'm going to do today. This is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to preach to you today. I'm going to preach to me. You're just going to get in the way, all right? Because I'm telling you, patience is not my greatest virtue. So if you like to listen to me, talk to me, you're welcome to do so. There was a king by the name of David. David understood the need for patience. This is what David said. David said, "Be still before the Lord. Wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It leads only to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land." See, most of us think that patience is the ability to wait on others, and that may be a part of patience, but actually, David has done a favor for us. David has pinpointed what real patience is and why we tend to be impatient. He said, impatience really stems, this is why we're impatient. You ready? Because we really don't trust God the way we ought to trust God. Because think about it. If you believe God's in control of every situation, if you believe at the end of the day, God works everything out together for your good and for His glory, then no matter what situation you may find yourself in, you really should be patient. So I'm going to help you today. I'm going to give you a simple truth to remember that hopefully will help you like it's going to help me to conquer the problem of impatience. This is our key takeaway. It is great to wait, knowing that God is never late. Matter of fact, you could say that with me right now. It is great to wait, knowing that God is never late. So I want you to think about it this way. God has a process on how He wants your life to flow. He has a plan on how He wants your life to go. He has a purpose in how He wants your life to grow. And the key to patience is just simply being willing to believe that as you walk with God, you can trust God to move His process. You can trust God to work His plan. You can trust God to accomplish His purpose. Now, all that said, and I hope that sounds good, and I hope it really kind of helps you a little bit. But look, here's what we all know. There are still what I call patience poppers in our lives. There are pins out there that can pop the balloon of your patience before you even know what hit you. There are things out there that can sour this fruit in your life. And when they come into your life, I want to share with you what they are and how to handle them. Okay, so some things I want you to remember, okay? Number one, problems will try your patience. True statement. Problems will try your patience. Now, I'm going to look at a passage in the book of Job, which is right before the book of Psalms. It's Job chapter 42. And before I get to the story, let me just tell you, we've all heard of the phrase, the patience of Job. Well, Job was indeed known as the most patient man in the Bible. And if anybody ever needed patience, Job needed patience. And if you don't know the story of Job, let me kind of tell you what it is. If you do remember, let me refresh your memory. He lost everything that he owned, and I mean everything. He lost his farm. He lost his cattle. He lost his livestock. He lost his money. He lost his land. He lost his children. He lost his grandchildren. He lost his health. He was covered with boils and sores that were just terrible. And if that wasn't bad enough to add insult to injury, even his own wife basically turned her back on him, and his so-called friends didn't do anything but condemn him. As a matter of fact, you know what his wife said to him? She didn't encourage him. She didn't lift him up. She said, you know what I think you ought to do? You ought to just curse God and die. You ought to just curse God and end your life. And so here was a man that God himself even said, Job is blameless, but he's got all these unbelievable problems. going on. Now, therein lies a great lesson we can learn from this man called Job and from the book of Job. That is, problems, listen, problems are not meant to defeat you. They are not meant to depress you. They're not even meant to discourage you. They are meant to develop you. If you will let God do this, listen, God will take problems, and there won't be tools that will tear you down. God will make them tools that will build you up. Now, my dad used to say, and I understand why, he said the one book of the Bible he just didn't understand more than any other book of the Bible was the book of Job. And I want to grant to you, Job is a difficult book to understand, maybe one of, if not the most difficult book. And the problem that a lot of people have that don't know anything about the book is they tend to focus on the first part of the book where Job has all these problems, and they forget about the last part of the book. But where you learn the greatest lessons about Job is in the last part of the book. Because after Job goes through all of these difficult problems and all of these catastrophes he had to face, he does come out on the other side. And I want you to listen now to what Job said. Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. You ask, who is this that obscures my plans without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now and I'll speak. I will question you and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and I repent in dust and ashes. You know what Job was saying? It took him a long time to get there, but he finally said, God, I get it. Now I understand. Problems are a part of your process and a part of your plan and a part of your purpose to help develop patience in my life. I visited with a man in his home several years ago. It was the week after he had received Jesus Christ into his life at our Easter service. And we were just rejoicing over his decision. And then all of a sudden he got a big kind of a concerned look on his face. And he said, Pastor, I've got just one big question. And it really wasn't as much of a question as it was a frustration. He said, I've asked God to give me patience. And then it's almost as if God just beats me down as hard as he can because all kind of problems are coming into my life. And I don't understand it. And then he said, why is it when I ask God for patience, he sends me problems? Well, frankly, I just laughed. I couldn't help but laugh. And here's what I said to this man. I said, has it ever occurred to you that the only time you need to be patient is when you've got something to be patient about? So when you ask God to teach you patience, he said, absolutely. Here's a problem you need patience over. So all God's doing is just answering your prayer. I've said many, many times, every problem is a test. Every difficulty is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to trust God. It's an opportunity for you to listen and hear from God. It's an opportunity for you to believe God. It's an opportunity for you to learn to exercise patience, believing, I can wait. I'm going to be patient. I'm not going to get frustrated because at the end of the day, God, you will handle this problem. That's step one. Here's step two. People will test your patience. People will test your patience. Now I'm going to leave Job, and I want to go to a book called James, the 5th chapter. James, if you don't know who he was the brother of Jesus. And James wrote perhaps the most practical book on life from a Christian perspective in the New Testament. It's one of my favorite books. It may be one of my 2 or 3 favorite books because what James does from beginning to end, he says, okay, we're not going to talk theory. We're not going to talk hypothesis. We're not going to talk very much theology. Let me tell you what the Christian life looks like. So he's talking about patience, and one of his last lessons he teaches is on how to be patient. Here's what he says. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains? You too be patient and stand firm because the Lord's coming is near. Now I find it interesting because I grew up out in the country. My dad used to have a garden every year, and I lived around a lot of livestock. And I find it very interesting that James uses the analogy of a farmer, a Palestinian farmer, to illustrate patience, because Palestinian farmers had to wait on 2 different seasons of rain or else they would starve to death. First, they had to wait on the autumn rains, and those are the rains that would make planting much easier and seed germination possible. Then they had to wait until the spring rains to harvest so they could maximize the amount of grain to be reaped. See, the farmer realized that unless God's process was followed, there would be no harvest. I'm going to say that again. Unless God's process is followed, there will be no harvest. Now listen carefully. What is true of plants is true of people. It's true of us. It's true of you. It's true of me. See, impatience. You know what impatience is? It's when you decide to take matters in your own hands. You try to rush the harvest, and you wind up ruining it instead of harvesting it. And when you do, you wind up taking the wrong job. You wind up marrying the wrong person. You wind up making the wrong decision. By the way, the Greek word for patience that James uses, it's a beautiful word. It's a combination of two Greek words. One you'll recognize. One is the word macro. We get long or slow from that. And then there's the word thumia. We get the word thermos or thermal from that, which means anger. So what patience literally means, here's what the word means in Greek. It means to be long-tempered. It means to have a long fuse. You've heard of people with a short fuse. When you're patient, you have a long fuse. In other words, patience is the ability to be slow to anger rather than quick to anger. I read where someone said this, I like this. They said, patience is the ability to idle your motor when you feel like stripping your gears. And we've all been there. Now don't misunderstand one thing. This is important. Patience does not mean that you never get angry. Jesus got angry. The Apostle Paul got angry. God gets angry. Moses got angry. Patience doesn't mean that you never get angry. Look, sometimes you have a right to get angry. Sometimes it's right to get angry. And sometimes you're wrong if you don't get angry. What patience simply means is you're slow to anger, but when you do get angry, you're quick to get rid of it. Now let's be honest. Too often, we have just the opposite problem. We're quick to be angry, slow to get rid of it. So we get angry fast, and what do? We hold on to it. When we hold on to it, what does that anger become? It becomes a grudge. What does grudge become? It becomes bitterness, and then we're miserable. So you want to be quick slow to anger, but quick to get rid of it. Now, again, I want to be honest with you. If you're going to spend any time with people, your patience is going to be tested because people will test your patience. As a matter of fact, I hate to break this. Some of you have never been married or never had kids. You know who will test your patience the most? The people you love the most. The people you're closest to. And if you've been married more than 3 days, you know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I don't love anybody on this planet more than I love my beautiful, precious, sweet wife, Teresa. I mean, I love her with all of my heart. But there are sometimes I'm around Teresa and things maybe not going too cool, and I just have to keep saying this verse over and over. Love is patient, love is patient, love is patient, love is patient. So if you're one of those people that you say, man, I've got difficult people I've got to deal with who try your patience, let me tell you something. The only way you'll ever learn to be patient with difficult people is to love them. And the Bible is very plain. We're to love everybody. And if we're to love everybody, then with God's help, we're to be patient with everybody, which is exactly why the Bible plainly says in 1 Thessalonians 5:14, be patient with everyone. Now listen, if God is in control of your life, then in reality, He's the one that makes us wait. You ever thought about that? Traffic doesn't make you wait. Doctor doesn't make you wait. If God's in control of every situation, ultimately, it is God that makes us wait. And so knowing that, we should remember who we're being patient with. That makes all the difference in the world. So every time you have to wait, try this. You're waiting in traffic. You're stuck in traffic. The doctor's a half hour late seeing you. You need to remember this. You know what, Lord? I'm not waiting on the doctor. I'm waiting on you. I'm not waiting on the traffic. I'm waiting on you. When I was unexpectedly invited, and it was unexpected, to meet with President George W. Bush in the Oval Office, along with 6 other clergy right after 9/11, we were escorted into the Roosevelt room. And we were told that the president, somebody came in and said, the president will meet you momentarily, just in a few minutes. Well, we waited 45 minutes, and the meeting hadn't taken place. And as you're going to see in a moment, statistics tell us that being men, if you're a man, this is what statistics say, you'll normally leave 30 minutes before the meeting takes place. If the meeting takes place in 30 minutes, men will suddenly get up and leave. However, we all gladly waited, and we would have waited for hours. I would sit there all day. You know why? I'm waiting on the president. Now, if I'm not waiting on a doctor, I may say, hey, forget this. If I'm waiting on, to see an electrician, I may forget this. I'm waiting on the president of the United States, the most influential, powerful person on earth. Well, if I'm willing to wait like that on the president and for the president, how much more should we be willing to wait on God and wait for God? So here's the third thing. Persistence will toughen your patience. Now, to put it another way, the reason why God allows difficult people and demanding problems to come into our lives is so that we can grow in our faith and become mature. Matter of fact, James goes on to say later in this book, in this same chapter, he says, the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Now, the word there, the word for complete, is a word that means mature. I like to go to the gym. I like to work out. And as I've gotten older, I realize that I can't just do cardio. I've got to do strength training. I've got to keep my body as strong as I possibly can, as flexible as I can. Well, patience is like going to God's gym. It's a faith-building exercise. And the main reason we're impatient with people is because we're impatient with God. And when we are impatient, what we're really saying to God is this: God, I'm not happy, and I'll tell you why. I don't want to be on your timetable. I want you to be on my timetable. I don't want to do what you want me to do when you want me to do it. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I want you to work according to my clock, and I want you to work according to my calendar. And see, you know why patience is so difficult? It's really easy. We've said it, over and over, because it involves waiting. I'm convinced that one of the most difficult things to do in life is just wait. I can do anything well. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a well waiter. I just don't wait well. I'm just being honest. It's just a fault in my life. And no wonder, because we live in a country that exists on frozen dinners, instant mashed potatoes, powdered orange juice, packaged cake mixes, instant print cameras, and freeway express lanes. No wonder we don't like to wait. Just be honest with me. See if I can just get a raised hand watching me right now. Would you just be with me and say, you know what? I'd just rather do about anything than just wait. We're not a patient people. A few years ago, there was a survey taken of over 1,003 adults by the Associated Press. They discovered the following. Watch this. This is interesting. While waiting in line at an office or store, most people take an average of 17 minutes to lose their patience. On hold, on the phone, most people lose their patience in 9 minutes. Women lost their patience in line after waiting for about 18 minutes. Men, 15 minutes. People with a lower income and less education are more patient than those with college education and high income. That's kind of surprising. People who live in the suburbs are more patient than those who live in the city. See, we need to learn to be more like God that created us, more like the God that loves us. Because listen, our God is a God that knows how to wait. So, why do you mean that? Do you understand the reason why the world is still here with all of the evil and all of the sin and all of the rebellion and all of the godliness that is in it? Have you ever said this? I've said it. If I was God, I've had enough. If I was God, I'd just put an end to the whole thing. You say, yeah, why doesn't he? Well, it's not because God is powerless. It's not because God is passive. It's because God is patient. You know why he doesn't do it? Because some of you watching this program now have never given your life to Christ. And he's waiting on you to make the greatest decision of your life. So I want to close with maybe the most beautiful verse in the Bible about patience. It's out of a book written by another disciple named Peter. He said this: the Lord isn't really being slow about his promise, as some people think. No, he's being patient for your sake. He does not want anyone to be destroyed. He wants everyone to repent. If God had lost his patience with us as sinners, we'd all be doomed. But every day the sun rises. Every day the human race still lives. Every day is a day that reminds us of the loving patience of God. And if he is that patient with people who, for the most part, completely ignore him. They ignore what his son did on the cross. How much more should we be patient with the tough problems and the difficult people that we face? So, here's my word to you today. Hurry up and wait.
Stay tuned for a final word from Dr. Merritt. Join James and Teresa Merritt this fall in beautiful Pigeon Forge, Tennessee for the 2019 Mountaintop Conference. Hear powerful preaching from Dr. Merritt, great music from the Cathedral's Family Reunion and the Booth Brothers, and side-splitting comedy from the one and only Tim Lovelace. Also, this year's program includes an encouraging message from special guest Ron Walters. Your conference ticket includes admission to Dolly Parton's Stampede Dinner Show, the Smoky Mountain Opry, and a day pass to Dollywood. You don't want to miss Mountaintop 2019, as you will leave relaxed, refreshed, and renewed after spending time in the beautiful Smoky Mountains. Sign up now to join James and Teresa Merritt for this amazing experience by going to mountaintopconference.com or by calling 800-309-0816. 800-309-0816.
Of all the fruit of the Spirit, the one that is most challenging for me is patience. Nearly everything you go through in a day will test your patience. Your kids, your grandkids, your job, even your church. But here's the good news. God tells us that if we will wait patiently, we will receive His blessings. That is reason enough to grow in patience. This week I challenge you to wait patiently on the Lord because He will always respond right on time. And to test what I just said, let us both patiently wait until we meet again right here on this station.
Touching lives, teaching people everywhere who Jesus is and why they need Him. This program is sponsored by Touching Lives Ministries and is made possible by the grace of God and your faithful prayers and gifts.